Joining us right now is Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp, who has very vocally set the record straight on this. Governor, it's good to have you, and our prayers have been with your state. We've been following all of the cleanup efforts after the tornadoes, and we've been praying for Georgians. But you've been out there setting the record straight on what actually is in this voting bill. And for those who may be wondering if this is the same thing about the bringing water to people in line, yes, it is. And I have to say, Governor, why is it that, people can bring their own water. And you also can, it's November. It's not, I know it's Georgia, but it is November. It's not like it's going to be, 100 degrees outside with 90% humidity in November in Georgia. I've been in your beautiful state at that time of the year. But I thought that was so weird that was the focus. That was the rally cry for everyone. The way that I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, there are voting places that actually have food trucks there, correct? I thought I read that somewhere. Good to see you.
Good to be back, Dana. Yeah, it is. It's almost comical, really, because I think what happened was they set this whole narrative of Jim Crow 2.0 weeks ago, thinking how bad this bill was going to be. They didn't realize that we were actually going to expand access and do really smart things like securing ballot drop boxes, requiring counties that didn't have them before to have them, making sure that the elections officials continuously count and tabulate the ballots till every vote is counted. And then we expanded access, especially on the weekends. So I guess this is all they got to complain about. But of course, people can still have water. They can bring food. They can order a pizza. The county elections officials can provide a drink station, water station, what have you. And we're only talking about within 150 feet of a precinct or 25 feet at the end of the line. So if you're outside the 150 feet, you can set up a food truck. A voter could get out of line, cross the 150-foot marked area, get a bottle of water from a campaign or a nonprofit or whatever. It's outrageous what they are saying about this bill. This bill makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat. And it's amazing that people are wanting companies to be boycotted because we're expanding voting access on the weekends in Georgia and really making the process for the county elections officials easier and more efficient to count the votes. But I'll tell you the thing about the water too, Dana, that nobody's asking, why are people standing in line long enough to even need a water? It's happening in Democratic run counties. They shouldn't be there for 3 or 4 hours. They should be able to vote in 30 minutes or so. Yep. And they don't need all of that. This bill addresses that with the amount of equipment that each precinct has to have. And if they have a wait time over an hour, it mandates that they take action in the next election to address that with either, a new precinct, more equipment, whatever the plan may be.
That's
of course, they're not talking about that.
That's a huge point that you just made. And that's something that I always bring up to people every time that we have an election, because whenever, and we're talking with Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia, whenever you hear these stories about people waiting in line for so long, I go and I look, where are they waiting in line at? Oh, well, who's running these precincts? Who are the people that are making determinations about how many machines are needed and how many places they should have and ballot boxes, etc.? Well, it's the party that controls that area that makes those determinations. It's not you, Governor Kemp, who's micromanaging everything. That's not how the system works. So if people are upset about it, they need to take it up with their local party leaders, the people who are running the elections in those particular areas. That's a huge point, Governor, that a lot of people don't seem to understand.
Well, there's tons of points like this that nobody's understanding because they don't want to. That doesn't fit the narrative of the left. These lawsuits that they've filed, they're making a big deal, all these groups. Well, they do this every time we pass an election bill in Georgia. It's not like this is the first time we've done it in over a decade. This happens after every major election because you have to deal with problems. Drop box is a good example. They never existed, at least in recent history in Georgia. They were added under the public health state of emergency by the Secretary of State and the state election board, which is bipartisan, by the way. And if we hadn't done something in the law, Dana, to deal with this issue, drop boxes would have gone away completely. The left acts like we're getting rid of something, but it didn't even exist in the law before. So we're addressing that now, requiring every county to have at least one. And there was a bunch of counties last time that didn't have them. The other thing is we have 134 of 159 counties that will now be mandated to have more early voting hours than they did in the last election yet we're being called voter suppressors and racist for doing things like that. I mean, the truth does not add up with their narrative, and that's the good thing for us. We just got to continue to fight hard and get the message and really push back. And that's what we're doing, because they are getting to some of these big companies. Delta folded today. They bowed to the pressure. It was politically expedient for them to do that. We've been working with their team the whole time. They never said a word about, any problems that they had with adding more weekend voting, securing drop boxes, continuous counting, making sure that people aren't harassed when they're voting only within 150 feet of the election, and a lot of the other things. And now they turn around and act like this is a bad bill. I can tell you, I'm not happy with that, and there's a lot of legislators that aren't either.
Yeah, I can imagine that. That's very unfortunate that Delta chose to make that decision in light of the truth, too. The truth always wins out. We're speaking with Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, and you had mentioned Governor, too, and I love this. The local elections officials, you wrote in an op-ed, they continue tabulating votes until the counting's complete. So you're not going to see any of these, all right, well, it's 11 o'clock. We're going to shut it down. We'll continue counting in the morning. They're going to keep counting until it's all counted, as I understand, correct?
Right. And one of the things that really frustrated me about Ed Bastian's statement today, he didn't call on any specifics. He just said that, all of this was done for a false narrative. Well, it wasn't a false narrative that voting started and stopped in Fulton County. And I'm not saying anything nefarious happened. Some people think it did. I'll let the investigation, find the truth to that. But we do know it created a lot of problems for people that were monitoring the election. It created doubt. So we're just going to put in the law that, look, we need to be able to tabulate the votes quickly and report them quickly. If you do that, it breeds confidence in the elections process. It doesn't matter whether Republicans winning or Democrats winning, and that's what we're doing in the bill. The other thing with the voter ID requirement on absentee ballots by mail, we've been voting with voter ID requirements since 2006 in Georgia. Every year, minority participation has increased. 97% of people have voted with a photo ID in person before. So this is not a drastic change, but what it will do, it'll take away an arbitrary signature match that's very cumbersome on the local elections officials. And I've worked with a lot of those people the 9 years I was Secretary of State, and I've talked to a lot of them. They feel like this will make their process more efficient and easier for them to do. And it also goes arbitrary, trying to match somebody's signature to matching numbers on a driver's license or some other identifier that is not arbitrary. And of course, you're not hearing, any complaints about that.
No, you're not at all. We're speaking with Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and about the crazy stories about this Georgia voter law. And this is, Governor, this is the 150 feet. That's to stop electioneering at polling places. Every single state. I've lived and voted in Missouri, and I've lived and voted in Texas. Both of those states have had similar, if not the same sort of requirements and regulations and law as it relates to electioneering at polling places. So this isn't something new that people in Georgia just decided to come up with arbitrarily. I mean, this has been something that has been in effect. It's been a law for quite some time, and it's all across the country. But yet, I guess, I don't know, have these people ever voted before? I have to ask them.
Well, and we've had the same law here for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was Secretary of State, when I wasn't on the ballot, I used to pop into precincts all the time, checking on the elections officials, seeing how the election was going. But when I was on the ballot, I never did that because I didn't want to violate that 150-foot buffer while I was a candidate. So we've had those kind of rules for a long time. So this is nothing new. It's just the hypocrisy is running rampant on this, Dana. When you think about President Biden, what he said, you compare Georgia and our early voting opportunities that we have to what Delaware has and our voting requirements versus theirs. He needs to be focused on his own state, not ours. Mm-hmm. Stacey Abrams was up in New Jersey, I think either today or yesterday, celebrating that they now have 9 days of early voting. Well, you know what? Georgia has 17. I saw other CEOs today talking about how bad Georgia's bill is. They're headquartered in New Jersey. We have more early voting days than they do. They should focus on their own state and not worry so much about the state of Georgia.
That's absolutely correct. By the way, I saw your tweet on that to Governor Phil Murphy, which I really liked. It was done very Georgia polite. Georgia has 17 mandatory days of early voting with 2 optional Sundays, and you all only have 9. So I enjoyed
Well, I
that.
mean, it's just the truth. It's the
Yeah.
truth. But what's so outrageous is like people are making a big deal about Stacey Abrams being up there to celebrate that. We just passed a bill that continues for us to have 17 days and adds the potential for counties to have, it adds a mandatory Saturday, has the potential for 2 Sundays if the county wants to do it. And we're getting boycotted down here. I mean, it's like, you just can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't. Last question for you, Governor. What would you say to those people who are looking at boycotting Georgia businesses here during a pandemic, during this attempted economic recovery period? What words do you have for those folks?
Well, I would tell them, first of all, depending on where they live, if they live in another state besides Georgia, they should compare their state's early voting and voting access to the state of Georgia, and then decide what they want to do and who they want to boycott. But regardless, I mean, look, even if there's another state that doesn't have some of the good laws that I think we have, I would never ask people to boycott their state or boycott a company if they weren't targeting us. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like you said earlier, Dana, we're coming out of a pandemic. I mean, people have been about to lose everything they got in certain sectors of our economy, especially in tourism and the service industry, our hotel folks, hardworking folks in the restaurant business. And to be talking about boycotting because we added early voting opportunities on the weekends in Georgia, and because we're securing ballot boxes and adding continuous counting. And yes, you can get water when you're in line to vote here, even though that's probably the biggest thing they're complaining about now, which shows how trivial their arguments are. I mean, that's just insane. That's not going to help anybody. But it's the cancel culture that we're in today. I mean, when I ran, we were in a fight for the soul of our state. I felt like now we're in a culture war. I mean, we're in a culture battle that we're fighting right now. And we got to continue to fight to push the narrative out, and I appreciate you helping us do that.
Well, of course. And I'm glad that you're setting the record straight as aggressively as you're doing. Governor Brian Kemp from the beautiful state of Georgia. We're praying for everyone there as they recover from all of those insane tornadoes, all those storms. Governor, good to see you. God bless you, and thanks so much for your time.
Thanks. God bless.